Amanda, you are known as one of the most influential female voices in procurement today. Can you
Yeah.
take us back to the moment you first found yourself stepping into the world of procurement? Was it a coincidence or was it a deliberate choice?
So, like most people, I did not choose procurement. Procurement kind of chose me. So, I'm going to take a step back because I think it's a really interesting story. So, when I was a kid, and it's fun now to think about this because my girls are about the same age as when the same age I was when this happened. But you probably know the movie Beauty and the Beast, right? And Beauty and the Beast, I loved that movie, and I fell in love with the French language at that moment in time. And so I started taking French in high school, and I got really good at it. I By the way, I don't speak it anymore. So don't
I
you're on that
will.
ticket.
I think my level of French is the same. I always say that I don't speak French, but I can communicate the way that I can survive.
Right, right. So I ended up getting a scholarship in college because of my French capabilities.
Okay.
So, but to do that, I needed to be a French major. And I'm like, what are you going to do with a French major? That's probably, it might get me places. But so I coupled that with a major in or in college called International Political Economics. Okay. Which is also obscure. A lot of people with that major go into politics. I didn't want to go into politics. I wanted to go into like international business. So anyway, that's kind of the foundation. So I loved French, got a scholarship, needed to match it with something. Then my junior year, I was going to graduate early from college. And my junior year, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? I don't know. There's all kinds of options. And so my counselor in college gave me this booklet, and it was like alphabetical list of job titles that I could get with my major. So I went through the A's and I was like, nothing really interests me. And then I went through the B's and I came across buyer. And I was like,
Oh,
I don't know what that is, but I love to buy things. That sounds like a lot of fun. I went out and I had built a relationship with a couple of French based international companies in my area. One of them was Schneider Electric. And so I went out on Schneider's website and like looked for job openings, and sure enough there was a buyer one position open. I applied for it, and about a week later I was hired, and I started about a week after that. So that's how
wow.
literally how I got into procurement, was that I thought I liked to buy things.
So procurement was your first choice. That was the first job you had, right?
So I worked at a law firm in college. It was a
Mhm.
bankruptcy law firm, and I was the one that was filing all the paperwork, right?
Okay.
And at the time, I thought maybe I would become a lawyer. Um, but the LSATs, the test that you have to take it to get into law school,
Oh,
I failed that miserably, and I was like, well, maybe lawyer is not the path for me. And so luckily, a buyer position came along, and I've literally been in procurement ever since.
and when was the time when you realized that this is exactly what you want to do? When was that turning point?
It actually was almost right out of the gate. And I will say, when I was in that buyer role, I was over travel, credit cards, and some HR categories. And the first initiative that I worked on was moving away from on site travel agents to an online booking tool for the travel program. And I loved driving that change forward and getting people to accept the new change, understand it, see the value in it. And I found out that a lot of the different work that I was doing in procurement was just that. Like, we worked on projects that drove benefit for the company forward. So it was something new kind of every day. And I also noticed that I was learning a lot about business, right? Because whether it was a travel program or something going on in HR, then I moved on to IT, you got exposure to so much of the business. And I loved that about procurement. It was that I could drive value and learn at the same time and have a different flavor around each corner each day.
I totally get that. This is exactly why I'm passionate about procurement too. You're learning every single day. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah. I loved it. And so it was right out of the gate. I was like, I love what I do.
What was the
Yeah.
most challenging time for you at procurement? Did you have that moment when you said, it's too hard, maybe I will try something else?
I'm going to reference two different times in my career. So the first time it was actually at Kraft. We were going through a SAP reimplementation, and I was the lead for procurement for that initiative. And much of my career, just so you know, like I started as a buyer and I was managing categories, but about 3 years into my career, I moved into more like transformation type roles. So I was over like I was a business process owner or I was leading different initiatives. So I wasn't doing the work of the day to day. I was helping kind of shift how procurement was being managed. At Craft, we were going through a re-implementation of SAP. I didn't exactly see eye to eye with the leaders at the time. Right. And so that was really, it was the first time in my career where I actually had a leader sit me down and he said, you talk a good game, but I don't think you can execute.
Wow.
That was like face to face. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, wow, I've never had that feedback because I pride myself on the ability to execute.
Mm.
But he saw me very differently than my other leaders did. So it was one of those times where like I would go home and I would cry in the car on the way
Oh,
home. Like it was just really
yeah.
tough. And then I learned a really good lesson because my husband said, you need to put yourself in his shoes to understand why he feels that way about you. So, after a lot of reflection, I realized that he was highly capable, but he was also new to his role and didn't know me before he was put into that role. So, I needed to then take the time to build a relationship with him, prove myself, earn his trust. That wasn't just going to happen because other people said I was trustworthy. So it was that shift that really made the difference. And then I was finally getting to the point of like having a really good relationship with him. And then the Kraft Heinz merger happened and everything, everything stopped. And
You had to
we went
start all
on.
over.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, that was a really tough part
Oh.
in my career. The other one was when I decided to start Wonder Services. I was in a job that I loved. I tell people it was my dream job. I built a team that I adored. I was going through a transformation. I was working with for my mentor at the time. I loved MGM. I like it was a great place to work, but I knew that if I didn't make that leap, I would always wonder, what if I would have done this? Right? Or
Uh-huh.
was I too afraid to do it? And so it was just the right moment in time, but I still like I was a single income earner. My husband's a stay-at-home dad. It's huge financial risk. We
Oh.
changed our life. Our like I had to move my girls into a different school because we couldn't afford the other school. Like there was a lot of things that we went through and it was super scary, but totally worth it.
How would you define success in your career, and how has that definition evolved over years?
I really got serious about what success looks like when I was at MGM, and I actually did a lot of thought process around what does that mean for me. And I remember behind my desk at the time, I had be the light for others. And that was my purpose. Success isn't monetary for me. It's not title for me. It's more about the impact that I'm having in other people's lives. And so being the light means, am I helping improve their career? Am I helping improve the success of the organization or of an individual? And that still is very true for what we do at Wonder Services. My whole mission is to make sure our customers are successful in their digital transformations. Period. If the money comes, the money comes. If the company grows, the company grows. But as long as I'm there, I'm in service of others. That's truly success for me. The evolution as of late is okay, that's good. But now, how am I giving back to others and leaving a legacy with others? I actually launched coaching last year. So I'm
Oh,
coaching some women in procurement right now on how to navigate their careers. And that to me is such a cool opportunity to be able to do because now I feel like not only am I serving others, but I'm directly having an impact, hopefully a positive impact on these women's careers.
I love it. So let's talk about Wonder Services. So you are now CEO of Wonder Services, as you said.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about what do you do and what drives you in this role?
First of all, I made it my own title. So my official title is Chief Wonder Officer. So I figured if I start my own company, I can just give myself a title that works for me. So Chief Wonder Officer, the whole premise around Wonder is to solve the problem of change adoption. And that's mostly within procurement and supply chain, although we do stuff outside of that now. But when I was working in corporate, we were finally in procurement getting money, right? We were getting investment for sourcer pay systems or to, for BPO processes or whatever it might be. And some people were being successful in those implementations, but I was hearing from a lot of people it was a struggle. They were not getting the adoption that they wanted. The suppliers weren't coming on board. Like there was just a lot of, I guess, churn. And what my fear was that we were getting money and then we were not meeting the expectations of the CFOs, of the CEOs of the companies and returning on the investment. So I was like, I can't have that happen because procurement needs those investments.
Yeah.
Like we've been so overlooked for so long and we need to do so much more. And that requires capital investment to be able to achieve. And so I was like, I can't have this happening on my watch. And of course, my husband will always say, like, if you see a problem, you like fly to it and try to solve it. That's the kind of person I am. So I was like, now is the time to start Wonder because we are getting those investments, but people need help to be successful. And through my career, I learned a lot of different ways to do that. And I knew there were talented people out there that I could hire on my team that could help procurement so much. So we grew from just me. I started it and I was like, let's test the waters for a while. And now we have 37 people across the globe that are working
Wow.
for either full time or on projects,
Well,
right? So we have this great network of people, and ultimately, if we can drive adoption forward either through really sound change management strategies, we will do that. But then we also offer services that help drive adoption, like a buy desk or procurement operations services, et cetera. So it's been fun to kind of develop out the service offering and truly help our clients be successful.
so you're doing your wonders by changing and transforming procurement, right?
Yes. Yes. Oh, I
Mhm.
like that. I'm liking that.
Procurement
Yeah.
needs change. We all know that, right? And change
Yeah.
management, I'm surprised how much change management is overlooked in procurement when you are about to implement new procurement system, right? Or change
Yeah.
something in the process. Usually they, procurement people think that few calls will, solve it. It won't.
Mm,
It
or
won't.
an email.
Or emails, yeah. Nobody reads them.
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
I tell leaders all the time, I'm like, when's the last time an email has changed your life?
Yeah.
Like or changed your behavior?
Yeah.
With the exception of the extreme, right? But
Mhm.
like day-to-day emails, most people don't read them, they don't reflect on them. There's no emotional reaction to
Absolutely.
that email. So we need to be thinking about that differently.
Absolutely. What makes your company's approach unique in the procurement space?
Well, I believe we're the only company that's uniquely focused on change adoption for procurement. So just the premise of it all, I think makes us unique. But another thing that makes us unique is that we don't, unlike some larger firms, we have an approach, but each approach is implemented differently depending on the client, right? So it's not just a playbook. Here's our step one, step two, step three, and everyone gets the same kind of a playbook. We have an approach, but it's tailored to cultures, it's tailored to experiences, it's tailored to what the particular need might be within an organization. So we can truly be agile and we can fit the need of the client. The other thing that I feel really passionately about, but other people have challenged me on, so we'll see how this works. But I also hire people who've sat in the seat before, right? Who also have consulting background, but I like to find those people that have straddled both worlds because if you are only consulting, you have a really great perspective on different industries, different clients, and the way things go. But you haven't sat in the seat to understand the pressure that that person feels and the politics that go on in corporations and and what it means to truly deliver for an organization. So I like to see both. Um, I call my project leads project Sherpas because they've been there, they've done that, they can show the right way forward and avoid the catastrophic decisions that might take place during one of these projects.
That's true. Only people that know the pain then see the way how to solve the problem, right? How to
Correct.
put the solution in place. That's
Yes.
true.
Yeah. Yeah. And they know what that leader is feeling,
Yeah,
right? Like they're like, I've been there. I know
yeah,
it's stressful. I
yeah,
know you're staying up late at night trying to think through all of this.
yeah.
And I've made that decision before. Maybe I can help you.
You have the history, you have the experience of talking to stakeholders. You can understand why sometimes they push back, right? Why sometimes
Yeah.
they are not reacting in the way you want them to react, because you know that pain. You already have experience with talking to them, with knowing their part of the business and their priorities that are different than yours, right? At the end.
Yeah.
So you know
Correct.
how to influence the people, but in the way that you understand their pain and you can fix that. Well,
Yes. And truly have an end user kind of viewpoint on how
yeah.
things are going, right? And that is so critical when you're going through a transformation like that.
And I think this is missing in procurement in general. We are too close and focus on processes, on we have to do it because we have been doing like that for years, and this is the process, and you have to follow, right?
Well, I always challenge procurement people, and I didn't learn this until I started Wonder Services. When you start a company, all of a sudden you need to learn about marketing and what it takes to be a good marketer, what how to do sales and like how the financial aspects of it. And so now my perspective is everyone in procurement should have to go sit and work in one of their end users areas, right?
Yeah,
What the amount of time that it takes to be a good salesperson, does a good salesperson want to spend a bunch of time trying to purchase something? No, they don't,
yeah,
right? They just want it to be simple. They want it to be a non event so they can go on and do what they need to do.
yeah.
And I think if you sat in the seat of a salesperson, you would understand that and maybe have a different perspective on our processes and how we present ourselves to those stakeholders.
Absolutely. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's play a little bit. Let's be future tailors.
Whoa.
We have a magic ball, right? What
Yes.
excites you the most about future of procurement?
There's actually two sides of this coin. One side of it is the impacts that we're having within organizations. So if you think about like when I started, it was more about cost savings and delivering on that. And then it grew into cost savings plus risk. And then it's growing into innovation. So you think about like the world that we live in. I think for procurement, the companies are starting to see the value that we can bring, but I think it's going to open so many more doors of how we can help support an organization and the value that we can truly achieve. So, how do we generate revenue? You see procurement organizations in these larger firms that are actually becoming standalone companies and they're generating revenue now. So there, it's just a super cool evolution of where we're going now. It does put stress on organizations because all of a sudden you have the same amount of team members and a lot more responsibility, and you have to figure out how to make that happen. But I think it's just a really awesome opportunity for procurement. So that's one area. Like the scope and scale of what we can do is almost endless at this moment in time, and the value that we can achieve. The other side of it is the technology advancements that are happening in procurement. I am one of those that is always jazzed about technology advancements. So some people might be scared of them, but just orchestration coming online and what those orchestration capabilities can bring. You also have AI, of course. We wouldn't be on a podcast without Mr. Me.
That's true.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about those technologies is that they can truly transform how we do procurement today. For instance, how much of it is going to be a centralized procurement organization versus giving guardrails to your end users, and then the end users are just executing procurement as part of their day to day instead of having a centralized organization. I think we're going to be able to get there to be like, here are your guardrails, go do, versus here's a structured process to intake into procurement and have a procurement organization execute that work. So we'll see. We'll see how things play out. But I'm really excited about the capability that's coming online and how that's going to give us so many more options to be effective procurement organizations.
I like what you said about passion of AI, and that is a good thing that we shouldn't be afraid of, because I can see that a lot of
Yeah,
procurement professionals, they feel fear, to
right.
be replaced. And I think about AI as a ex-procurement person that work, 15 years in procurement. I feel relief because I know all that manual processes that I had to do, on the entry level positions in operations. And I'm like, now it can be automatized, right? My
Right.
skills can be
Right.
reused for good for the company, and that's awesome. I love that part of the
Yeah.
innovation.
Great. And when it's going to allow the growth on that first side of the coin that I
Yes.
talked about. Like as we get more accountability, we're going to be able to grow into those spaces because we have the technologies that are coming online.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. So they kind of
Absolutely.
play together. Yep. Cool.
What advice would you give to someone just starting in procurement today?
So, first of all, welcome to procurement is the first thing that I would say. But the second thing is you have such an opportunity to learn about business within procurement. Like if I would recommend to anyone that either wants to become an entrepreneur or wants to become a multifaceted person in an organization, procurement is a must go stopping grounds. Like it's a great way to learn the business, to learn what it takes to create value, to learn how to build relationships with suppliers and with your stakeholders, to learn how to listen to other people's strategies and feel like how you problem solve and help them achieve their strategies. Like it is just a great place to learn. So if you are thinking about a job change or looking for a place to land, come to procurement. You will not be disappointed.
Fully agree with you. So let's talk about something that it's bothered me, a little bit as a
Yeah.
female in procurement. Procurement is
Okay.
still a male-dominated field. Why do you think this is the case, and how can we work towards change?
I will say the numbers of men are still dominant, but I think women are changing that dominance factor, even though we're less in numbers. So I don't like to say that it's male dominated necessarily. Yes, from a number standpoint, but man, the women in procurement that are uh, coming up through the ranks or already are chief procurement officers are making a huge impact on the way that we work and the value that we achieve. So kudos to all the women out there that are doing the work. You are paving the path for so many out there. Now, to your original question, I think that procurement has foundationally struggled attracting women, particularly because it starts at the university level. So, as you know, I didn't study procurement in university, but there are supply chain majors, and procurement is kind of tucked under supply chain. But people that get into supply chain majors, usually they're promoting logistics, they're promoting manufacturing. So that supply chain major, those two areas, manufacturing and logistics, are even more male focused than procurement is, right? So if that's the lead of a supply chain major and procurement's tucked underneath, I think we're going to get more male people in those majors to begin with than female. So I particularly think there's a need to shift that. Like I would love to see procurement as a standalone major moving forward in universities instead of it being a sub under supply chain, because procurement happens whether there is a strong supply chain presence in an organization or not, right? Like that it is really should be standalone. And then we can recruit all the diversity of people that we want to recruit into those majors. And you'll see most often, like when you talk to people, most people didn't study procurement in college. So I think there's also an opportunity to maybe gain more momentum if we have standalone. So I think that's where it starts. However, once people get into corporate, I don't think, I think we do a lot of this ourselves. Okay. So when we're recruiting for positions, we recruit for, you need to have, I use this example all the time because this was a real example. It was a mid-level job position for corn buying, right? So we're going to buy corn. Well, that mid-level position required 10 years of corn buying experience,
Wow.
right?
Mhm.
So, which might be okay for that role, but you're not going to get a diverse set of candidates into that
Yeah.
role. Maybe someone coming in from finance that knows about hedging corn
Mm.
buying, like there's a whole world of people out there that you could tap into that have relatable experiences without having 10 years of corn buying experience. Right. So we have to look at ourselves in the way that we recruit for these roles to see, are we really allowing for that diversity of talent and thought to come into our organizations by the way we're just requiring the background in these roles. Okay. So I think we do a lot of that ourselves. So those two are foundational issues that I think can be maybe changed or shifted in the coming years. So we can get more, not only women in procurement, but more people that have had other experiences outside of procurement that can bring in and enrich procurement long term.
One question came to my mind, when you were
Oh,
talking, and I'm like, okay, should I ask it or maybe not? But
yeah. Yeah.
when
Yes.
I think about sales, because it's very
Mhm.
similar to the being a buyer, you have to negotiate hard.
Yep.
You have to have that drive.
Yep.
The first person that you think about being buyer is a male, right?
Yeah.
It's like a really strong male that is very harsh, that know how to
With
negotiate,
you.
and it's not really
Yeah.
connected with the females that are more soft, nicer. There are more likability factors there. Do you think it's still there? People think this way, or
Um,
it's getting, because we know it's not true, right? It's just how it's set in the society, in the way of thinking.
So I'm going to be a little provocative and hopefully nobody gets mad at me when they listen to this. But women usually get what they
That's
want,
true.
right? Like, I mean, think about it. I mean, women, yes, it's maybe a softer approach or a more influence and less negotiating, but they usually get what they want at the end of the day. I mean, you talk to my husband, I like he knows I usually get what I want. So women have just a different approach to getting there, but are usually very, very good at getting what they want and making it such a deal where the other person feels good about it. Right. So, yes, men might have a more direct approach, more aggressive approach, and they might ultimately get to the bottom line that they're looking for. But does the other person feel good about what they are left with? Sometimes no. So I think women actually are very well positioned both for sales roles and for procurement roles because of the approach that we're taking, because relationships are becoming more important, because long term deals are really critical for the success of both sales teams and procurement teams. So I think there's been tremendous growth of women in procurement since I started in procurement. Like I used to be the only woman in the room, the youngest woman in the room, the youngest person in the room at when I first started. And now you see so many young, brilliant people, women, other minorities coming into the mix that we've made tremendous progress. There's still more room to grow, but I think women bring that really unique skill set that will take procurement to the next level.
I
Yeah.
recall your direct comment under the DPW conference post, where you mentioned it wasn't
Mhm.
fair that they didn't give you a platform to share your voice. Why do you think is that?
I just want to make sure that everyone hears this. So, DPW has made tremendous progress in the last year of having women on stage. Okay. So, I applaud them. I've told them that directly. That is a good sign. One of the conferences that I was talking about and how this whole thing came up, was that there was an underrepresentation of women, not only on stage, but in the audience. And it was an invite only conference. Okay. And so I provided some feedback around that they need to do a better job, and they reacted to that. And now I feel very confident that women are being more represented at their conferences. So 2 thumbs up
Okay.
to DPW for doing that. Now, the reason why I don't think I was invited to speak at DPW is a little bit more nuanced, and I don't think it has to do with me being a woman. It has to do with me being a supplier. Okay. So when you are a practitioner, DPW likes to have practitioners on stage, which is great. I present myself as a practitioner, not so much of a salesperson when I present, more of a thought leader. But their role at DPW is that if you are a supplier and you want to get on stage, you need to sponsor, which is fine. Um, they weren't overly transparent in that feedback, and that's the feedback that I gave DPW. If that was the case, they should have directed me to their sponsors, their sponsorship program, so I could at least have a conversation about that. So I did give them that feedback. That's not new news, but that's my understanding of why I wasn't selected, is because I wasn't a sponsor. But with that said, if you were either attending DPW in the fall in Amsterdam or saw the footage, you did see quite a few women represented there, both practitioners and some sales side. So I hope that that continues to grow in any conference. When you're looking at attending a conference, there's a couple of things that I would advise the listeners to do. I would try to understand what is the mix of people. And if there are less than 33% women at the conference or speaking at the conference, there's something wrong, right? We have 33% women in the organization, give or take, depending on what study you look at. But we have about 33% women. So if there's not representation at the conference, then you're missing out on something, right? Now, if you are a woman and you're going to a conference, ask if you can speak at it. Right? We need more women on stage. We need more representation, but also more perspective that we can bring to those conversations. So it's part of our job to ask the questions. And then if we get told no, we can understand why, but at least make the effort to try to get yourself on stage. I am direct, right? I love procurement. I love women in procurement. I love being part of the group of people that are growing women in procurement day in and day out. So when I see an opportunity, I'm going to say something. I expect the same people to do the same for me. So if I'm doing something that could be improved upon, I would love that same feedback
I
too.
love it. As a European
Yeah.
person that, sometimes it's considered too direct for Americans, I'm happy that you are the same way.
No, that's how we all get better, right? And then I was happy. Like after that feedback happened, it did frustrate me, the whole situation. But to see DPW
Mhm.
react the way that they did,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Like they listened and they improved, and you can see the results in
Yeah.
October,
And this is
this coming
how
October.
we
Yeah.
can actually make a change by getting the feedback that will tell you which way you should improve. I love that.
Thanks for asking the question
So
too.
outside of procurement, what's something that you're deeply passionate about?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, I have daughters, right? I have 2 teenage daughters, so they're into dance and into musical theater, and so I love being that mom that is there when they have their dance competitions and when they're on stage. Like, I put so much passion into what they do day in and day out, and hopefully I'm like their biggest cheerleader. So that is a big deal for me. And outside of that, I am very involved in my church. I am a woman of faith. I love having that grounding in the gospel. And so I put a lot of time into my church activities, supporting the community, etc. And then the last thing is I have another side gig. So once you start becoming an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, then it's like, oh, I see an
Yeah.
opportunity over here for a business, an opportunity over there. So we actually rent out our RV to people who are coming into Las Vegas and wanting to go to see
Oh, that's
the
great.
national parks around us. Yeah, so I love seeing people come to us who are stressed out, they're in need of a vacation, and then they go wander in the wilderness for a week or 2, and then they come back
Oh,
different
that's
people.
awesome.
Like, and they're just like so refreshed and a twinkle's back in their eye. So I love that what we do for those people who are taking those adventures in the desert Southwest of the United States.
I'm asking you as a working mother, and I know that you know the pain
Yeah.
behind that question. How do you balance work and personal life?
Foundationally, I don't believe in balance, which I know throws like a lot of things out. Like we're told all the time, you need balance between life and work. And it's like, no, you need priorities. And as long as you are focused on your priorities, you are going to be successful. So my priorities include there's no division between work and family. My priorities are set for the year. I actually wrote a eulogy about like what I want people to say about me when I die that I read every morning because then it helps me stay focused on what truly is priority for me. And if I'm doing the work against those priorities, I feel good about where I'm spending my time and how I'm supporting my family. So that I do a lot of work with the women that I coach around like your emotionally connected why. I have a very strong purpose in my life, and that keeps me grounded. And then the priorities kind of all support that. So if you look at it that way, it just is very clear and straightforward, and that's how I stay on track and feel really good about how I'm managing everything in my
That
life.
was one of the most mature responses to that question that I've ever heard, to be honest. Really. Oh, really? Because usually
Sure.
people say, okay,
Thank you.
I spend time with my family when I don't work. But to be honest with you, when you're passionate about your work, you're thinking about work almost all the time. Work become part of your life.
Yes.
I know it's difficult for some people to understand because they leave the office, close the PC, and they are outside of work enjoying the life. That's not my case. And I know that there
Right.
is a lot of
Yeah.
women that is not the case too. They want to be perfect, mother, they want to
Mhm.
be perfect wife, but they love their work. And they always think
Yeah.
about also about work, how they can improve it, how they can do things better. And that conflict at some point happened inside because you want to be perfect, in everything. And then there is a question about how can I balance that? And I love your answer that it's not about
Yeah.
balance, it's about priorities. I just love it.
Yeah. Well, and priorities also help you say no to stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and women don't like to say no traditionally, but if you have your priorities clear, then it's a lot
Yeah.
easier to say no so you can remain focused on your priorities. Um, I'll give you an example. So you said your work becomes part of your life. I have also seen my life become part of my work, right? And it just becomes like this nice integrated way of life as long as you're focused on those priorities. So I'll have and I post about this a lot, I'll have an experience in life that teaches me a lesson in work. And so if you think about it in a more integrated, not like I have my work and I have my life and I need to kind of like balance the two back and forth. No, it becomes integrated and focused on your priorities. And then it's much richer, it's much more enjoyable, and you don't feel like you have to carve yourself in half or in fourths to make it all
I love it.
happen.
I love the
Yeah.
direction, where our discussion is going. And
I'm so glad that you reached out and that you saw the post on LinkedIn and that you are doing these procurement stories because I always tell people the more stories people can hear about other people's experiences, A, they don't feel alone because other people are feeling um that they're going through something in their life and they're the only ones going through it. And that's almost never the case, right? Like other people have gone through something. So the more that we can
yeah.
share on platforms like this, the more people feel like they're part of a community and that they can get through something hard or they have clarity to get through something that they're trying to get through in life. So thank you for
Oh,
providing the
I'm so
platform to
happy to
be able
hear
to do
that.
it.
That was the intention, to be honest. I wanted to share stories of procurement people, right? What's behind the scenes?
Yeah.
Because at the end, I've been there, I've done that. I was, close to burn up many
Yeah.
times, and I know there are procurement people that are about to burn up or already they have been through that before because it's tough profession. My very first post on LinkedIn, it was like 2 years ago, started with the words, when I joined procurement, they told me, welcome into the most hated department in the organization. And that went viral. And I was shocked because that was the
Um,
first post. I didn't know what to do with it. Yes.
First
And that
time.
immediately resonated with
Oh, yeah.
everyone because people knew that procurement
Yeah.
is tough place to be because everybody hates you at some point. I know it's not true, but
Yeah.
you feel this way. And the more you are working, the more you are trying to beat that wall, the more you see or you start to be demotivated and you feel that you are alone. And that's the
Yeah.
purpose of that series. And that's the purpose of also my activities on LinkedIn, to show people you are not alone. And procurement
Yeah.
is beautiful. It's an awesome place to
Yeah.
work. But we have to do it together. It has to be a community that support each other and not fight with each other.
Yeah. And one of the big lessons I learned, I walked into an organization once and procurement was in that boat. Procurement was not liked. It was the black hole. There was feedback all the time. And one of the things that I did was go to one of my stakeholders' leadership teams and said, okay, what are you trying to achieve this year? And I just listened to them. And then there were a few things where I thought I could help. One was related to supplier relationships. They said that they have top 6 suppliers that they work with day in and day out and have no relationships with them. And so I went back to them after a week after thinking about it. And I said, hey, I think I can help you achieve better relationships with your suppliers. Had nothing to do with savings. And then I went and executed it. And then all of a sudden, procurement wasn't so hated. There's strategies that you can do to help reduce that tension, but you have to be thinking bigger than traditional cost saving in procurement to
And
typically
listen
make that
more.
happen.
So the very last
No, that's
question,
okay.
if you were not in procurement, where do you think life would have taken you?
So I actually still have this dream. So it might still take me there. So I would love to be in real estate. And I would love to have a company where you go in and if a house isn't selling, you remodel the house and then you can get a higher price point for the house and hopefully sell it. I would love to do that type of business. It's actually part of my eulogy that I mentioned earlier. And I would love it to be a family business. So my girls and my husband would all be involved in it. So we'll see if that happens eventually in my life. But I think that's probably where I would have ended up is some sort of real estate
That's
type
awesome.
of a
I
business.
love it too, to be honest, like internal
Yeah.
design and so on. I love it. So thank you for being part of
Uh,
Procurement Stories.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for initiating the Procurement Stories series. It's going to. I can't wait to hear from others too
Thank
that
you.
you interview.